All right. All right. You know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to see the movie Odyssey. You led me to it because of all of your messages and some of the hate messages as well. I mean, I received tons, but I'm not going to get all negative on you. No, I'm going to break down this movie from a writer's point of view. I'm going to go to the studio and I'm going to address all of the concerns. I'm going to try my best not to have you in my mind. Yeah, I'm talking about you. I see you there, ready with your keyboard to send me a negative message. Just wait until I finish watching this movie. All right, follow me along. We're going to see the Odyssey together. You know, sometimes when you have to kind of swallow humble pie and admit that you were wrong, I'm going to tell you about that soon. As you know, I just finished watching the movie and I have some questions, and hopefully you could deliver some of the answers as well. Remember that saying, the girls of the world ain't nothing but trouble? That's an old song from Will Smith. And that really helps to understand this movie. Because the main girl, Helen of Troy, that's what this whole thing is about. She was captured in a way because she fell in love. She had an affair with this handsome, dashing fellow called Paris. And so she was swept away to Troy. And then her husband and a whole bunch of the Greek army said, we want to go into Troy to rescue Helen. So they launched 1,000 ships. They said that Helen is the face that launched 1,000 ships because she was the most beautiful woman on earth. That's kind of hard to swallow. So the whole entire epic was from the first book, the Iliad, and they swept into the Trojan area, and they wanted to conquer that city. So what they did is they devised a scheme, which I'll tell you soon. But this story, this journey is different from this book. I talked about this before, and I had tons of you people, hundreds of people sending me messages and saying, York, you got it all wrong. There needs to be way more Greek representation in this movie. Christopher Nolan, according to the trailer, before this movie came out, had it all lopsided. And I wrote back and I said, you guys don't know what you're talking about. I think we need to give Nolan the benefit of the doubt. Besides, this is a fictional tale. This is not Saving Private Ryan or this is not a documentary where you have to get all the facts right. This is sort of like Lord of the Rings. So we don't need all of the story arcs to be there and all of the Greek representation to be there. We could diversify the cast. So I was fine with it. But then I started watching the movie and analyzing the structure. And one thing, I'm going to divide this into two halves. You may not like my opinion whatsoever, and I'm still divided on this. And I'm going to give you my rating soon, but the first half, I'm going to call this Nolan good, or let's just say good Nolan. All right, let's talk about the things that Christopher Nolan did well. Yeah, we're going to start off on a positive note. Number one, the beggar's buildup or the vagrant's buildup. The tension of the main character, Odysseus, hiding in plain sight as a beggar leads to a perfectly structured and highly satisfying climax. Now, I'm kind of doing this in reverse order. I think that was the best part of the movie. I know this is a big spoiler here. If you haven't seen the movie, go out and see it or read the book. But this is great because he was in disguise. You wouldn't think that he was the king because it's been 20 years since he's returned to his castle, to his people after this grueling, nightmarish adventure. And so he wanted to take back the throne, and also he wanted to boot out all of those suitors because his wife, Penelope, she had hundreds of people that wanted to take her hand in marriage because they were saying, well, the king is gone, probably dead. You need somebody to rule Ethicus, so marry me. So she had tons of these disgusting, awful men that were lined up to marry her, but they were despicable tyrants. So when the hero of the story comes back to his kingdom, he was in disguise. And Penelope said, if whoever could string a particular bow and shoot the arrow through these axes will be the one that will take my hand in marriage. And lo and behold, big spoiler here, he returned, he strung his old bow, and then he fired the arrow. The arrow went straight like a needle all the way through the axe heads, right to the target. Then after that, he says, okay guys, what are you doing? This is my woman. Out you go. He does ramble on these guys and takes out all of the villains. Buildup was incredible. That's good Nolan. Number 2, Hathaway, the anchor. Anne Hathaway's performance grounds the story with a masterclass in quiet strength and unwavering loyalty. I know there's a lot of people, they don't like Anne Hathaway. I have no problem with her. I like all the movies that I've seen her in, and I thought she did a great job in this. In fact, I thought she did one of the best out of the whole entire cast. She looked regal. She looked strong. Yeah, her husband was gone, and yes, she was crying through different parts of the movie. I get it. At times, she kind of freaked out. You can't be perfect, right? But she had a lot of grace to her. She handled herself very well. Number 3, masterful monsters. The terrifying monsters in this, such as the Cyclops and the unsettling Circe scene, are spot-on examples of brilliant visual magic. That's what made the story amazing for me and for a lot of the people there. It was just incredible to see all of these monsters come to life. The most horrifying part of the story was the Cyclops. Yeah, you probably heard it being said, but you gotta see it. You got to see this yourself. I've seen Cyclopses before in variety of different movies, but not like this one. This Cyclops was vicious, awkward, very human-like, massive in scale. And when he screamed, I felt like running for my headphones because it was so loud. That scream, I've never heard a scream like that in a movie. It was breathtaking. Also, the giants that Christopher Nolan put together, they were incredible giants as well within this movie. When his whole team was being slaughtered, and then Odysius and his men, they had to run back to the boats. Wow. Also, speaking about kind of like monsters in a way, was the witch. She was incredible. She was amazing in this by turning his men into pigs. And how she did it was by force feeding them. And she put her arms and her hands almost like if the men were like Play-Doh, and she turned them into pigs. That's pretty amazing. But you got to see it. Number 4, the weight of war. Reframing the entire journey around the psychological trauma of the Trojan horse gives the epic a sharp, focused theme. It absolutely does. Because it went back and it talked about the Trojan War itself, or that horse. It talked about it, and they played it out in such a good way. They showed little parts of it here and there of how they're going to take the city, and then they brought it back, and they showed the devastation. And the main character, even though he thought of the whole entire plan of how to take down the city, he was tormented by the weight of war itself. There was a lot of guilt. He felt that he sinned in a great deal. And throughout the movie, he was sort of like looking for repentance. The weight of sin was so heavy of a burden that he didn't really feel like going back to Ithacus. He felt like going away somewhere else because his men died under his watch, and innocent people died as well. So that is number 4. Number 5, the courageous conclusion. The film earns its unique ending by brilliantly choosing a message of peace over a predictable Hollywood victory. Now, some people may not like this, but we're going to get to those people very soon. I like this because it wasn't just about him being the hero of the day. It wasn't a triumphal victory that's totally satisfying. No, he sacrifices a lot. He sacrifices being the king of Ithacus because he goes into exile with his wife because he feels that so much blood that he spilt he cannot go on. He cannot be a king, a peaceful king, because of all the sins that he's committed. So him and his wife, they go into exile. So not the type of Hollywood book ending that you want. It's different than this book. In this book, he doesn't do that. He doesn't go into exile. He remains the king, and he reunites with his father as well. It's completely different. Now, these are the things that unfortunately I don't like about the movie. We've reached the junction, that part of this episode where I'm going to call this bad Nolan. All right, so here we go. Number 1, the muffled masterpiece. The roaring score overpowers the actors, making crucial dialogue incredibly frustrating and difficult to understand. When I was there in the theater, I had my friend, my executive producer, Oral. I turned to him as we're watching the movie because I didn't understand what was going on. They were speaking English. We're going to get to that soon as well. They were speaking perfect English, but the sound was muffled. Because Christopher Nolan, he likes to elevate the music and elevate the sound effects and everything else to the point where you have to listen in closely to hear what they were trying to say. And I think this kind of spoiled them. Again, my buddy Oral, he seemed to understand it perfectly. I was struggling a lot through this movie just to figure out what they're trying to say. If they just would have clarified that would have been better. So because of that, you don't have all of these great moments, these memorable moments. Can you imagine, say for instance, Star Wars when one of my favorite scenes when Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader was there and he says, "Luke, I'm your father." And he says, "No, that's impossible." And then Darth Vader says, "Search your heart, boy. You know that I'm right." Right? We remember that line for so many years, decades after that. We remember that. Why? Because it was very clear. It wasn't muffled. The sound quality wasn't, he didn't say, "I am your blah, 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 blah." He didn't say that. And he says, "I'm blah, 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 blah." We wouldn't get the impact of that line. But because it was very clear and precise, that stayed with us, didn't it? You remember that line, right? And when he says, "The force will be with you always," in the same movie, one of my favorite movies, favorite line, you didn't have him say, "The force will be with you." Blah, 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 blah. He didn't say that at all. We heard him very clearly. So why couldn't Christopher Nolan, who people say he's like a god in movies, why couldn't he just make the characters crystal clear? He did that in Batman. That was great. The Dark Knight series, I understood that. How come he couldn't do that in this one? This is supposed to be more epic than the Batman series. So number 2 of bad Nolan, jarring jargon. All right. So the jargon was kind of jarring. The modern vernacular breaks the immersion. A more elevated Shakespearean tone would have better suited the ancient setting. Yeah, I think it would have. I was on before this when I saw the trailer. I said, "Yeah, don't worry. You guys are saying that it's too American. I don't know what you guys are talking about." And I battled with you guys. But now, as I said, I'm kind of eating humble pie a little bit because I get what you mean. It is very American or very Canadian. I'm Canadian, even though I was born in Jamaica, but that's another story. But yeah, this whole thing was very Americanized. I've seen epic movies before, and what they've done, even if it's in English, it's a more elevated, a more Shakespearean type of English. I'm not saying they should get all British actors, even though British actors are probably the best, even better than American actors, but they could have just made it a little bit more refined. Instead of saying, "Hey, Daddy, what about Father?" or just different things, they could have made it better. It wasn't that hard to do. I know, I get it. Christopher Nolan is a writer just like me, and he wants the characters to relate. So he's thinking, I want my characters to relate to the average Jane, the average Joe. So they're going to speak in a vernacular that people will get it. People will understand. Because if they speak in a Shakespearean or a more elevated English or a tone, they're going to lose the audience. It's quite the reverse. You lost the audience because this is supposed to take place 700 years before Christ. So a long time ago, right? And so, but when you have a movie that says 700 years before Christ and they speak like your neighbor, or they speak like your brother, or they speak like somebody at your workplace, it kind of loses you. It didn't lose me entirely, but to be honest, a little bit, yeah, it was jarring. All right, let's go back to the list of bad Nolan. So number 3, disposable crewmates. The script falls, or it fails to give Odysseus's men any real depth, meaning their brutal deaths carry almost zero emotional weight. And that point is almost a death nail to the movie, but it's not, because there's other better parts. But his crewmates, these men that he led for 20 years. So it wasn't just like he just met them off the street and they just entered his boat and they gave them a sword and they said, "Okay, let's go to war against the Trojans." No, they were his compadres, his best friends in a way, for 20 years. So you think that he knows them, and we want to get to know them. But that wasn't the case. So when some of his crewmates were eaten by the Cyclops, or they got shipwrecked, we didn't really shed a tear. I think that's a problem. When you're writing a story, it doesn't matter the characters, you have to feel for the characters. And I didn't really feel for his crewmates, unfortunately. I would like to, I would, but I didn't feel it. Now, this is completely different, but with a movie like such as, what's that movie again? Lord of the Rings. I call this movie, The Odyssey, Lord of the Rings' evil twin brother. All right, it's kind of like that. But with Lord of the Rings, you felt for all of the characters. When somebody got shot with an arrow, you're thinking, "Oh my goodness, is he okay? We don't want him to die." All of those people, you wanted to stick around. All of the good guys, you felt it right away. And when one of them died, it felt like it was a friend of yours that died. You felt it right through the movie. With this movie, you didn't feel that at all. I didn't feel any sense of loyalty. I know that he was loyal to his men, but I didn't really feel that. We have to feel things. A death has to mean something, right? It does. Going back to Star Wars, when Han Solo died, I felt that because we were invested. We don't want Han to die. We don't want any of our beloved characters to die. So we felt it right away. All right. So let's return to the bad Nolan list. Number 4, passive protagonists. Odysseus spends too much of the middle act letting external forces drive the plot rather than making active, proactive choices. Yeah, unfortunately, he does. This movie is long. It's about almost 3 hours. I don't mind long movies. I sat through Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings was very long, but it didn't seem long. It just seemed like the hours were just passing by. That's okay. You could give me a 5-hour movie as long as it's going by very good. I don't mind. But this one, almost 3 hours in, and the middle act was kind of slow, kind of dragging a little bit. Slow burns are fine, but your main character, your protagonist, has to drive the story. And I like Matt Damon. Matt Damon, he was good in this. Matt Damon is one of those guys who, when you see on the screen, he's very likable. Right? You just like him right away. There's just something about Matt Damon that I just like. It doesn't matter what he's in. And so I like him, but the way that it's written, he wasn't in charge much. He didn't take command as much as we want to. Yeah, he was leading the team, but making certain choices and certain decisions, he could have been a little bit more proactive. Number 5, and this is the creme de la creme of the bad Nolan list, the pacing penalty. With a massive 173-minute runtime, the middle act at sea drags, making the long wait for Ithacus feel far too literal. That kind of feels like number 4, right? It kind of drags a little bit. We are waiting for his triumphal return to Ithaca. We're waiting for that. Sort of like the return of the king. We're waiting for the king to return, to come back to his rightful throne. And what did we get? We're kind of waiting around a little bit. There's this one person in the theater. You know, when you go to the theater, you're there to have a good time, right? To watch the movie. But there was this lady. She was sitting a couple of seats away from me, and about 5 or 6 times during the movie, just to make a point, in her case, that's boring. I didn't think it was boring, but she thought it was boring, so she yawned very loud in the movie theater, just so that people could say, oh yeah, it's boring. Aren't you upset when one person robs it for everyone else? I looked at her a couple of times, but we didn't make eye contact, and I didn't want to get up and talk to her about it. Why should I? But it was kind of annoying. But maybe her point was the number 5 point was that she was probably looking at her time and at her watch, and she was waiting for the triumphal return to Ithaca for him to take back the throne. And it took a long time. Did I like the movie? Well, yeah, I did like the movie. Out of all of that, I think the performances were great. Now, there is 3 controversial people that I like to talk about, because I talked about it before and you guys gave me some heat on it. So let's talk about it right now, because they were in the movie, but they weren't really all that dominant in the movie. The first one is my sister, my African sister, Lupita. A lot of you said, what is she doing in this movie? This is supposed to be a Greek play, a Greek poem, and she doesn't belong there because she's African. Get rid of her. That's what you guys were saying, and you were making fun of her. And I get it. I'm going through this book right now, and it's all Greek, right? But on the very first chapter, because Homer, when he compiled this, it's 24 books altogether. And in the very first book, they run into Ethiopians. Ah, there you go. So in this book that's supposed to be all Greeks, they ran into a whole bunch of Ethiopians in the first chapter. So people that are saying that this movie has to be all Greek, have you read the book? It's in the first chapter that there's black people, Ethiopians. So with beautiful Lupita being in this, that's okay for me. But did she perform well? Did she pull off the role? Well, she only had, what, like 4 minutes of screen time? She didn't have a lot to play with. She only had a couple of lines here and there, so I can't really make up my mind, but from what I've seen, she was fine. She was good. The whole idea of her being the most beautiful woman in the world, let's go into that a little bit. Because yeah, according to tradition, Helen of Troy is the most beautiful woman on earth. And people are complaining about this, that she's not all that good looking and all that attractive. All right, let's correct that. All right, because in this movie, it's not about her beauty. It's not about that. In fact, there are scars on her face because of everything that's happened. Now, that part is a little bit questionable. Was the scars on her face because of her brooding, evil husband? Maybe. Possible. She seemed like she was a captive in the castle. But did she pull off her lines well? Yeah, she did. All right, number 2 of the most controversial figures. This is not from the most to the least, but number 2 was Ellen Page, or is it Elliot Page? Let's just say Ellen Page. Some people said, and I was one of those people as well, that was thinking, how could Ellen Page pull this off? How could this person pretend to be a soldier, and much less one of the best soldiers? But in this movie, she wasn't Achilles. No, she was Sidon. And Sidon is not even in this book. They made this part up and they put this into the movie. This is sort of like a replacement for Achilles, because a lot of people said, well, Brad Pitt's portrayal of Achilles in the movie Troy, that was great. And he was manly and he was strong. Why are they going to get this person to play the role that Brad Pitt was kind of famous for? But they didn't. They went with some unknown character. And also, this person didn't have a lot of screen time either. Did I like Ellen's performance? To be honest, Ellen could have did a better job. I wasn't that enthusiastic. And to put her on as, even though she didn't have a lot of lines, but as one of the main vocal points, because they go back to that character a few times. So it is an important character, even though there's not a lot of screen time, like around, 5 minutes or whatever screen time that this character has. But I guess she did a fine job. She has to pretend that she's a man, and she has to pretend that she's a soldier. I guess that's okay, but I'd rather them go in a different route. Also, the number 3. This is one of the most controversial characters. It's a rapper by the name of, drum rolls please, by the name of, now I'm trying to remember his name. Stewart? No, that's not his name. See, he's not even all that popular. Do you listen to this guy? Here's a picture of him right there. Okay, so when he was doing his thing, Christopher Nolan said that they're going to put a rapper into the storyline because the rapping and poetry kind of relates to each other in such a way, so they're going to put him in. But when they put him in, he wasn't really rapping, thank goodness, because that would totally destroy this epic tale, because what's he doing rapping? It's supposed to be 700 years before Christ. And he was doing a poem, but not a real poem, not the greatest poem. And he kept on banging on something, which was very annoying. And I said to my friend Oral in the movie theater that this is kind of taking me out of the movie here, even though I'm a huge fan of rap music. But why did they get this guy? And I can't even remember his name right here. See him? That guy right there. Do you like him? Have you listened to his music? It doesn't matter whatever you think of him, but did we need that in the movie? Couldn't they if they wanted to get a rapper who's also a very good poet, then why not Common? He's also a good actor and a good poet. And that would have been great. They could have put Common in actually performing a poem, and as they're doing some flashbacks here and there throughout the movie. But let's get some of the good stuff, because I don't want to end this with a negative note. This is a colossal, monumental movie. I don't think it's an epic movie, because there's some parts in this that seemed small. An epic movie doesn't mean that it's just a long movie or a whole bunch of characters. Epic has to mean something. It has to be big, like Lord of the Rings. That was an epic. But I think what he pulled off was good. It wasn't great, but it was good. He took a book and he made it and he modernized it for today's audience, which is a tremendous feat. It's not easy to do that. He had to go through, take a look to see what's going to work, what's not going to work, because not everything in a book is designed to be in a movie. Of course, he's getting a lot of criticism, and I've gotten some criticism back. One of the big things, I guess, what would make this whole movie better? Now, here's my humble pie. Because remember I said I'm going to eat some humble pie, and some of you are right. They should have put more Greek people in the movie. I heard that there was only one Greek person, and he's not even a main character. And also, they made it too American. All right. I would have even complained if they made it too Jamaican, even though I'm from Jamaica, but that would be weird, right? Jamaican speaking in this movie. And so they should have put way more Greek people. It may have made a better movie, but would people have seen it? As I said before, if it was an all-star cast of Greek actors, I don't think my sweet, beautiful wife would pay an arm and a funny bone to go out of her way to see this movie. She would probably stay at home. But because they put A-list actors in it like Zendaya and our guy Tom Holland and everyone else, it's making a lot of cash in the box office. So I think overall, my rating for this out of 5 golden compasses, I'm going to give this movie
3 out of 5 golden compasses.
Yeah, you think it's going to be lower because I was trashing it. No, I mean, Christopher Nolan, he's a good writer. Don't get me wrong. But Nolan, if you're going to be making another movie, you know who to call. You could fly me over to San Francisco or wherever you are. You could fly me over there, and you and I, we could work on a script. If you're going to remake the Iliad, or you're going to make the Iliad into a movie, call me up, call a brother up, and we can sit down and hash it out. All right, that's it for me. Thank you very, very much for watching. Also, if you want to see of the good Nolan into a sci-fi drama, then check out Welcome to Earth Stories. Now, this is not a video. This is audio. It's sort of like an audio book. So you got to listen to it. We're going on our 9th season. That's welcometoearthstories.com. Check it out there. Thank you very much for watching. This is York, and I'll talk to you soon.